Efforts by the management of the Nigeria Customs Service to get protesting clearing agents back to work seem to have failed, as the meeting between the two parties ended in a deadlock. The freight forwarders operating at both the Tin Can Island as well as the Port and Terminal Multi-Purpose Limited commands of the Customs last week begun an indefinite protest following the expiration of a 72-hour ultimatum given to the federal government to review the electronic valuation system for imported vehicles and cargo. The government, through the Central Bank of Nigeria, had recently introduced an e-valuation and e-invoicing policy for imported goods using what it's called the vehicle identification number for the valuation system. So this is basically an automated valuation system for clearing imported vehicles. At the stakeholders meeting organized by the NCS, the protesting agents vowed not to restore their services until their demands are met by the government. The Controller General of Customs, Hamid Ali, has said that the service is going to modify based on the complaints of the clearing agents to arrive at a conclusive arrangement for the initiative because there is no going back. Today, we're looking at the face-off between the Nigerian government and clearing agents. This is Business Edge. I'm Tolulope, Adeleru, Balogun. And joining me today is Dr. Bolaji Akinola. He's a maritime expert and the spokesman for the Seaport Terminal Operators Association of Nigeria. Bolaji, welcome to Business Edge once again. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Tolu.
Thank you. So let's start with the background of the policy that has been introduced by the CBN and is now supposed to be implemented by the Customs Service and the clearing agent. So the e-valuation and e-invoicing policy didn't come out of thin air. What was the reasoning behind it? What issues was it meant to address?
The introduction of the vehicle identification number, VIN, I think is the contentious issue here, which was introduced by the federal government last year, but then Customs is using it this year for the purposes of imposing value on imported vehicles. The imposition of that value by Customs is for the purpose of determining the customs tax, that is the import duty payable on such imported goods. So the issue is the vehicle identification number, VIN, which when originally introduced last year was for the purpose of tracking the history of all those fairly used vehicles that are imported into Nigeria. But then this year, Customs decided to use it as a base, as a mechanism for imposing or determining the values of imported vehicle for the purpose of customs duty assessment on those vehicles.
Okay, so
this is where the problem sets in with the clearing agents.
Okay, so there had been a 72-hour ultimatum initially given, and now the clearing agents who don't work for customs but must be licensed to work as clearing agents at the ports in Nigeria have protested the VIN. As far as you know, what issues do the agents have with this VIN in particular?
The issue with the VIN, and not just the licensed customs agents, but I think Nigerians should be concerned, is that Customs used it to arbitrarily increase the import duty payable on those fairly used vehicles. And what that effectively means is that you are going to need about 3 times what you needed before now to clear the same 3 times the money you needed to clear the same kind of vehicle out of the port. So it effectively increases the cost of clearing vehicle at the port.
Okay, so one of the reasons, as you said now, is that there's a disparity in the process. And then we're also hearing from the agents that they claim that the Nigeria Customs Service has a target to meet, and that part of the push to particularly use the VIN policy or the VIN initiative is for customs to meet that target. What do you see is really going on here? Is this about money, but money going into federal government coffers?
It is unfortunate. Customs, of course, has moved away from being a trade facilitator to a revenue generator for the federal government. And unfortunately, this is the trend we are seeing with most of our government agencies in the maritime industry. Yes, I think it's about money for customs. Don't forget last year, they raked in 2 trillion naira as revenue, about 2.33 trillion naira. And this year, they have raised the stakes higher. They want to collect 3 trillion naira for the government. Where is the money going to come from? The volume of imported items are not increasing. We are still at the same level. In fact, we are the quantum of importation into Nigeria now is lower than what it was at the peak of our economic growth in 2014. So, and then customs wants to collect more on the same volume of imports. The only way to collect more would be to raise the price, to raise the amount of duty payable on those imported goods, and that is what is happening. So for vehicles, which I believe is the starting point for them, Nigerians will be, or importers and their agents will be paying 3 times what they paid before now.
And I like that you said that it seems that vehicles are the starting point. And I'll go back to my intro because the electronic valuation system is for imported vehicles and cargo. So it's not just going to be something that touches vehicles. What do you think the expanse is going to be? What kind of cargo do we eventually see might fall under this valuation system?
Everything that is imported into Nigeria will be affected eventually. The starting point is, of course, vehicle, as I said. But I think there are 2 issues that the media has mixed up here. Number one is the CBN e-invoicing system for imported items. That is a different concept, which started on February 1 from the vehicle identification number VIN valuation system that customs have introduced. These are 2 different ideas altogether. The valuation system, the e-invoicing system that CBN has introduced is for importers to submit their invoices, both importers and exporters, to submit their invoices on a window that the CBN has created, their trading window, rather than the manual invoices that were submitted before now. That is different. That did not raise the import duty payable on those imported items. It's different from the vehicle identification number VIN valuation system that customs is doing. The VIN valuation system, in a nutshell, means it's just what they do under it is just, before now, what you do is when you import a vehicle, you submit the invoice.
Yes.
That you got from the seller of the vehicle abroad. And then customs raises import duty based on that. In essence, I could import a Camry and another person could import a Camry, and I would say, look, I bought my Camry for $10,000 in the US. Someone else could import from Belgium the same type of vehicle and say he bought for $8,000. And then customs, we might end up paying different import duties on that same type of vehicle because of where we bought them from and the different prices that we paid at that point. But what is happening now is customs is saying, no, we will, if you import a Camry, we will go online and look for the costs of a Camry, and then you pay import duty based on that cost that we are sourcing on the internet, irrespective of how much you bought yours and where you bought it from. And I think this is the bone of contention here.
Okay, so I want to go back to something you said, and that was in regards to the Nigerian Customs Service moving from being a trade facilitation agency now to a revenue generation agency. And we've seen Nigeria, like other countries, as you also pointed out, are looking for revenue everywhere that they can find it. Do you think there is a space for an agency like Customs to chase revenue in a way, or to attempt to raise a certain amount of revenue even while continuing their trade facilitation activities? Is there a compromise or middle ground between what the government wants and what we really need the Nigeria Customs Service to do?
I am of the opinion that revenue collection should be taken off the Nigeria Customs Service in its entirety. Revenue collection, I mean, like every other tax, federal government tax should be collected, should be done by the FIRS. Customs should face the business of facilitating trade, because the two, you cannot combine both in one agency. It becomes a very big problem. Yeah? It's like trying to serve two masters. One will suffer at the end of the day, and of course, money will always get the upper hand in matters of this nature. So customs concentration right now is on revenue generation for the federal government, because I think those who manage customs get government's applause when they make more money for government, and they have seen that as the way to hold on to their position. So revenue generation should be taken off customs. Customs should focus solely on trade facilitation, because revenue generation, collecting 2 trillion naira, at what cost? At what cost? Perhaps we should begin to conduct studies to assess the impact of this aggressive revenue drive by customs on businesses, on employment. And then you will see that the country might be losing much more than 2 trillion, the money collected by customs in the long run. We have a situation where you import, your vehicle is cleared, your imported goods are cleared from the port, and then before you barely exit the port gate, you have another customs unit waiting for you 100 meters away from the gate. And then they subject you to a fresh round of checks, and then raise debit note and all of that, and then you pay. What the owner of such goods, so eventually we transfer that cost to the market. So Nigerians will pay for it. And we are suffering for all of that through increased inflation and lack of jobs for our teeming youth.
Okay, and I'm happy you brought up the consequences, because even now, the clearing agents' protest has led to consequences, and that's going to be the next point of call for our conversation. So, Bolaji, please just hold on. There are a number of figures right now going around, some saying 10,000, some saying 12,000, and some even saying 500 billion naira is what Nigeria has lost right now because of this protest. We'll get into the repercussions of the clearing agents and Nigerian government face-off that's happening at the ports. Do stay with us. And still with me is Dr. Bolaji Akinola, maritime expert and the spokesperson of the Seaport Terminal Operators Association of Nigeria. We're looking at the standoff between customs and clearing agents. Now, vehicles are a major import into Nigeria, particularly used ones. And some reports now say that over 12,000 vehicles are stuck at the ports and billions have been lost. Let me bring my guest back now. Basically, what is the repercussions right now, as we're seeing it, of this protest action by the clearing agents?
Well, it's affecting port operation. Of course, cargoes will build up at the port. There will be backlog of cargoes, and by extension, port congestion will be looming. But the good thing for now is that this is confined to only one port. Tinkan Island Port Complex, where you also have the PTML terminal. The PTML terminal is the terminal that is responsible for handling the largest number of vehicles that are imported into Nigeria. But one of the consequences is that we are losing cargo, diversion of Nigeria-bound cargoes to the ports of neighboring countries. This past 10, 11 days, we have at least 6 RoRo vessels. RoRo vessels means those vessels that carry vehicles to the ports. At least 6 of them have been diverted to the port of Cotonou, and we have the names of those vessels. And those vessels were originally built to come to Nigeria, and the vehicles of them are going to end up in Nigeria anyway. They will land them at Cotonou and then smuggle them through the land borders with the active connivance of even the customs officers here now. Through the land borders, they will be smuggled into Nigeria. And customs will not be able to collect any import duty on those, yet those vehicles will end up in the Nigerian markets. Innocent Nigerians will go and buy them, and then customs will wait for those innocent Nigerians at Seme, at Ore on the expressway, and intercept those vehicles and subject those Nigerians who are traveling with their families to trauma. They will seize the vehicles and impose arbitrary duty on those vehicles. No, so this is what is happening. Diversion of Nigeria-bound cargoes to the ports of neighboring countries, which means we are losing jobs that are our clearing agents, our dock workers, our truckers, and the rest of them should be doing. We lose those jobs to neighboring countries. That is the implication of what is happening. Even before this new imposition, more than half of the vehicles that end up in Nigeria do not come legitimately through the ports. They are landed in ports of neighboring countries and smuggled into the country because of the high-handedness of customs. But the new VIN valuation policy or system has now exacerbated that.
Yeah. So I need to ask, how long do you think the clearing agents can hold out on this protest? Because they've threatened that if things are not resolved to their satisfaction, they will continue the protest. And just with the picture you're painting now, even having 6 of these ships going to Cotonou, it's going to be much more than that in the coming days and weeks if this protest goes on. How long do you think they can hold out?
Well, this is their second week. They were into the second week of it. I didn't know they would be able to hold out for this long, but that tells you that people have been pushed to the wall and now they are reacting. I think the wise thing for customs to do is to go back to the drawing board and see how they can cut down on this arbitrariness.
Okay, so let's talk about that. So the customs head, Hamid Ali, has said that they will look at the complaints and work to modify the evaluation, the VIN system. But what do you think a modification will look like? Because inherently, what the clearing agents are protesting is how the valuation is done. And if it's a systematic one, algorithms, code, there has to be a deliberate and intentional action to adjust that. So what do you think a modification that might be satisfactory, particularly to the Association of Nigeria Licensed Customs Agents, would look like?
Yes, in addition also to the National Association of Government Approved Freight Forwarders, there are 2 of those major groups that are spearheading this protest at the ports. Now, customs is under pressure to make more money for government. Don't forget, this year, they are aiming at raking in 3 trillion naira for government on the same volume of goods that were imported into the country last year. We are not foreseeing any drastic increase in importation this year. So last year you collected 2 trillion naira on the same volume of goods. You now want to collect 3 trillion. So 50% increase on revenue targets. So the only way for customs to do that will be to squeeze the importers and agents of consignment into Nigeria. So I don't see customs backing down on this because the idea is to start from here and see how they can spread that system to other imported items. The point that the agents have, and I've interacted with several of them and their leaders, the point they have no issues with electronic application in the determination of import duty. The problem here is the arbitrariness that customs has decided to associate with this system. I think that arbitrariness should be eliminated by customs. It is very important they do that. Failure to do that will mean that the protest might continue. I do not speak for the agents, I don't speak for the freight forwarders, but I have seen the determination in them to carry this as far as possible. Why the government might be taking the protest for granted is because it's happening in only one port. If they had been more organized and had been able to spread it across all the other ports, I think government would have by now responded to their agitation. Second also is that even at the Tinkan Island port where the protest is happening, it is not affecting port operations per se. They have only gathered in front of the customs command to stop clearing processes. But normal port operations in the main ports have not been disrupted.
All right, Dr. Bolaji Akinola, this is a situation we'll be following very closely. It has really serious ramifications for Nigeria's economy, and we do appreciate your time today. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
All right. And right now, the number, as I told you earlier, according to reports, stands at over 12,000 vehicles, used vehicles that are at the port here in Nigeria, or rather at one point, the Tinkan Island Command, and over 500 billion naira that's been lost. If this continues into the next week, there will be consequences. And if this protest spreads to other ports, the consequences and economic repercussions could be massive for the largest economy in Africa. It's a situation we'll be watching and following very closely. You're watching Business Edge. Up next is NC4 to watch. And here are a few stories we're keeping our eyes on. We start in the southern part of the continent where Lesotho has postponed its budget after the main party withdrew from the nation's ruling coalition. The All Basotho Convention announced its pulling out of government shortly before Finance Minister Thabo Sofone was set to deliver the annual budget in the capital. Lawmakers prevented the minister from speaking by insisting that the government had collapsed, though the Speaker of Parliament has yet to make a declaration on the matter. GCR Ratings states that South Africa's banking industry is healthier and stronger than expected, and its banks are well positioned for whatever uncertainties and challenges might confront them in 2022. Vinay Nagar, senior analyst of financial institutions at GCR Ratings, noted several times that the finances of the banking industry are remarkably healthy. Commodity markets extended their bull runs on Thursday, with aluminum, coal, and palm oil all hitting new records, while crude oil and wheat scaled multi-year highs as Russia's invasion of Ukraine disrupted global raw material flows. Russia's stature as a top supplier in oil, gas, metals, grain, and shipping markets has meant that the harsh sanctions applied to several Russian entities following Moscow's invasion of Ukraine have upended several critical resource supply chains. And finally, Russia's narrow path for turning its $24 billion in International Monetary Fund reserves into cash hinges on Chinese authorities and may face additional constraints as it looks for resources to defend the ruble and fund its war effort. All members of the IMF receive an allocation of reserve assets known as special drawing rights that's roughly proportional to the size of the country's economy. Those assets can be exchanged for 5 currencies deemed freely usable by the IMF. That's the dollar, euro, pound, yen, and as of 2016, the won. And that's the Business Edge we have for you. Thank you so much for joining me. Don't forget to follow us on social media and, of course, download our app, and you can watch us on the platforms where we are available. I'm Tolulope, Adeleru, Balogun. Have a fantastic day.